Rob Bottin was my white whale for The Thing Expanded.
Yeah.
TK Carter, who we were negotiating with 3 days before he passed away suddenly. The holy trinity of Expanded are Aliens, The Thing, and Terminator. We have a plan and a synopsis for Terminator. I'm playing in my mind at the moment with a brand new format where I can explore movies like Jaws, like The Shining. I'm nervous about The Thing Expanded.
You have nothing to be nervous about whatsoever.
Yeah, we care about it. We're all sensitive.
You've just landed Kurt Russell, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Hey folks, welcome back to Only Sands, and as promised, I have Robin Block with me here, who is the founder and CEO of CreatorVC, the guy behind all those magnificent documentaries that we've had over the last, 6, 7 years now, maybe 8 years?
8 years this year.
8 years, wow. In Search of Darkness, In Search of Last Action Heroes, In Search of Tomorrow.
We've got Aliens Expanded, first-person shooter, the soon-to-be The Thing Expanded, and Slasher Trash.
And Slasher Trash as well, which I'm really looking forward to. As growing up in the 80s, 70s and 80s, as a horror fan, seeing Jaws in the late 70s and going into the early 80s, discovering horror through the Video Nasties period, I was really hooked on a documentary that came out, although you can't really call it a documentary. It's more of a kind of compilation, an extended trailer, if you like, which is a movie called Terror in the Isles, which I don't know if you've seen or not.
I've never seen it, and I didn't know about it until after In Search of Darkness. And it's because they talk about it, yeah. So I've never watched it. I've seen clips of it. It's got Donald Pleasant.
That's right. Yeah, Donald Pleasance and Nancy Allen are the hosts in it, and essentially, for a lot of people my age, it's a Bible. It was what I learned about horror from. It gave me an insight into various different subgenres and movies that I could go out and find on VHS during the early 80s. And then we fast forward to the late 2010s, and I see this trailer on YouTube, this amazingly well cut together trailer for this documentary In Search of Darkness, and it's like the Bible for people, nowadays. This is a kind of it's an amazing documentary, but these have somehow surpassed it, and they are a reference guide, a time capsule, if you like, for a lot of people these days in terms of their reference points for 80s horror or 90s horror or whatever it is that you guys are covering. What was the moment that you realized that there was an audience hungry for these kind of 4-hour documentaries like In Search of Darkness?
There wasn't a moment. It was a gradual nexus of forces, right, that led to this. So I'm 48 now, so I'm Gen X, and before running CreatorVC, I ran other media businesses, and I got to my late 30s, and I was just starting to get really burned out and like not enjoying what I was doing, didn't want to have clients anymore, didn't know what I was doing next. And parallel to that, I was becoming increasingly nostalgic for the VHS horror experience from when I was a kid, from when I was like 10 years old, onwards. And I used to go online and just look at old VHS cover art and just as a way like to bathe in the nostalgia of it. And I eventually started with the first documentary we did, which was In Search of the Last Action Heroes. And that really showed me that I'd already, run teams. I'd learned a lot running a business. That I'd had successful businesses, but I'd never been so plugged into something. Like I thought, wow, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And we'd had this success with the action documentary, but I wanted to indulge in my love of like 80s horror. So I came up with this idea In Search of Darkness. And I remember, this is the power of ideas and how you can just make stuff happen. I remember it was July 14th, 2018, and I wrote in my sketchbook, In Search of Darkness, and the list of casts that I wanted in it, and how I wanted to do it, how I wanted it to be, like that experience that I was giving myself going online, looking at the VHS cover art, and not even watching all the movies, but just like watching the trailers of the movies.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
That was my starting point, and you know, that was 14th of July 2018. By October 6, 2019, we're in Hollywood at Beyond Fest in a packed out 600 seat cinema with a queue around the block at the Egyptian Theatre, like in Hollywood. And I'm on a stage with all these 80s horror stars thinking, what am I doing here? It was the most surreal experience, signing posters afterwards and stuff like that. What, you know, it was crazy. And that's that. The first In Search of Darkness absolutely changed my life. It was like that first viral moment, and so many crazy things happened to me on that journey. Like when we did the first viral trailer, so not the one that you saw on the Kickstarter, but the initial one, it got picked up by everybody. When we did the Kickstarter, and this is before we really knew how to do Facebook advertising and really sort of built a whole machine around what we were doing. We raised £100,000 just through organic means.
Yeah, yeah.
We had rock stars backing us, and just like just mad things happening. And I was like, well, this is the moment I've been waiting for. And it's, you know, I've been so lucky with the amazing people I work with. But I've always had a super clear vision of what I want the documentaries to accomplish for the viewer. Like I want it to be, you know, a kind of tsunami of nostalgia, and I want it to be a real intimate indulgence, and that's what they are.
Did you always see CreatorVC as kind of nostalgia driven, or did that kind of evolve organically? I mean, because you did Last Action Heroes first. Was action movies always your thing before you did the...
No. I mean, I loved 80s, you know, all the classics. So, you know, the I suppose the holy trinity of 80s action movies are Terminator, Predator, Aliens. You know, and that defined my aesthetic, and what, you know, that was like the best era for movies ever, really. So it was what I was into. It's also what we, you know, I got inspired by watching lots of YouTube creators doing retrospectives on that, and I loved it. I got really hooked, and I loved how that made me feel. And that was the pattern. It was just switching over to horror. And I was a horror movie fan, but you wouldn't be able to identify me. Like I don't have tattoos. Like I'm different to, I would say, our audience, who are kind of, they identify with the horror genre.
Yeah.
You know, and they lean in. And, you know, what I learned very quickly was that there is so much demand for like a high quality experience that knows its audience, that can speak to the teenager in you that first discovered this era, you know, these you know, this work, but also the 40-year-old in you that wants more, you know, that wants to reinterpret what was great and almost time travel back. You know, when I look at the kind of, you know, rough cuts of the latest In Search of Darkness, I know we're getting it right when I just forget to be, you know, constructively critical, and I'm just like enjoying it.
Yeah.
Sort of warm bath of nostalgia, and that's how we know we're getting it right.
So it's kind of one part business strategy, and then the other part is like genuine fan passion.
This business is so difficult that if I wasn't all in, I couldn't be all in on anything else. Because what drives me personally is, like, I don't have ideas for movies. I'm not a filmmaker. I think in terms of taking something I already love and how can I get more out of it.
Well, you mentioned there about the fact that you do watch YouTube channels, and we spoke beforehand about the fact that you want to always feel close to the fans in terms of, you know, keeping up to speed with, you know, different content creators and things like that. And one thing I just wanted to thank you, by the way, because you actually reached out to me after watching the documentary episode that I did a few weeks ago. I was really quite flattered that you reached out.
It was a brilliant episode, and this is the thing, like when backers do unboxing videos, and we've got a whole playlist of them, hundreds at this point, it's like the biggest blast. We share it on our Slack, on our internal Slack.
Yeah.
But your video in particular, because you know what you're doing, and you've been doing this for a long time as well, you can't buy that. You can't buy the fact that you have legitimately funded these documentaries. Your relationship to our work is unique, right? And you could have said anything you wanted, and you were really positive, and it was completely sincere. You can't buy that. You can't buy that. And when I watch things, especially on YouTube, like I like to write a little note just saying thank you, because we work really hard on these projects, and it's that intimacy that we crave. I feel like especially now with the credits, where we have all the backers on video at the end of the credits, right? Like the feeling that I want to generate with these documentaries is I want it to be like not just your experience of remembering these movies and revisiting them, but like it's the peer group around you. It's like your people.
Yeah.
It's like you found your tribe. And, so that video is a fantastic, and you praise lots of other documentaries as well. And there's some really great work out there. And I was like, well, Darren really knows what he's talking about. You've got you've got a very educated opinion. It wasn't just because you said nice things about our work. But I was just, I was hugely fascinated. I shared that before I left a comment. So
thank you.
It's just that's like, for me personally, that's as good as it gets.
So going on to starting, well, you started with Last Action Heroes, you then went to In Search of Darkness. Why? I mean, I guess, were you growing up in the 80s and got into horror more in the 90s, or did you get into horror in the 80s?
In the 80s. It's my mum, bless her. I remember watching The Thing with my mum when I was about 5.
Yeah.
So I have a real memory of the chest bursting scene. I remember for my 10th birthday party, my mum rented out RoboCop and Night of the Living Dead. So and my mum loved horror movies. So I used to just, from very young, I just ingested that. And I always loved movies and talking about movies and all of that kind of stuff. So but I was, I worked at Blockbuster Video when I went to university.
Oh, wow.
I was one of those kids that just, my most fun thing was me and my friends on a Friday night or a Saturday night, get a pizza, some beer and some cigarettes, and we get like some really good B movie horror.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was my teenage years, and I miss it. So much of this is about recreating that feeling.
And so it was inevitable that you would start with the 80s doing
yeah. I mean, also it's very different to the 90s. I think the 80s is just a very unique period of time where lots of different technology was happening, and you had especially the boom of the VHS era. So it became a lot more. There's nothing like it. The 90s aren't like the 80s. The 70s, which we're covering next with the In Search of Darkness franchise, is different. It's new Hollywood. It's cinematic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But the 80s is just so iconic, and also, back in 2018 and 2019, we were going through this massive 80s revival.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was just timing as well. Like, that was the right idea. Sometimes you get lucky. It was the right idea at the right time.
Yeah.
And we just didn't get in the way. We just rode it.
Yeah. So you're doing this 80s documentary. Did you ever envisage that it would be 3 parts? Or did you always set out to do one and then go, actually, people loved this. We can actually extend this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd never believed we would have done over 15 hours with the 80s. In the future, we might revisit the 80s again. There's more stuff we haven't covered,
Yeah.
And you could never predict demand. You just never know how it's gonna go. And I always say to my team, like, the best case scenario is we get to go again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, we did 3 in the 80s, then we've done 2 in the 90s. We're going to do the 70s. We're going to go back to the 70s. We're not going to split up the 70s. We're just going to do 1970s. And if there's loads of demand, we might do another one. We want to do then the 2000s, the noughties.
Yeah.
And then, you know, that'll be enough. That's like 30 hours of material.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I was going to say it would be a stretch to do more than 1 6-hour documentary on the 70s. I think one is probably.
Do you know? I don't know. Like, because I've been watching tons of 70s movies, and I think that the value. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are no longer around, but there's so much iconic IP.
Yeah.
Halloween, Jaws behind you, Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
Exorcist,
Carrie, you know, like Exorcist, like just like all like, and it's not. These are films that had to be brilliant, just cinematically.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And also they have endured. So, you know, we do want to get everyone who's still alive, but we also want to get the best filmmakers in Hollywood now talking about them.
Yeah.
So we want to make them feel new to you, or we want you to view them in a new way. And also because you've got the Hammer stuff as well. So you've got the 80s, although it does evolve, there isn't a massive difference between like a film from 1982 and 1988, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But 70s, it's like night and day between early 70s and late 70s.
Yes.
Like there's stylistically, from a technology point of view, like just so there's so much, and it'll be interesting. Like anything that we do will be driven by our audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even before we launch the 1970s, we're going to do a validation. You're on our mailing list, you will get a form with questions going, this is what we're thinking. And
I was going to say, because you mentioned Hammer there. I mean, that's probably a documentary in itself alone. There's been.
I think there's already some Hammer documentaries out there.
There is, but they're not that great though. That's the thing. There's a couple out there that are okay, but they don't. You know, they don't have the same vibe that you guys bring.
I haven't seen them, and I love Hammer, but I think that I'd like to look at this. I'd like to look at these films and not compare them, but almost because they're all being featured chronologically, there is a comparison. You see an evolution. I don't know if there'd be the demand for a Hammer project, and you know, that on itself doesn't excite me, but the 1970s, like internally we have a whole Slack channel. I'm working on the poster design right now for the 1970s poster, and like we're going with like a grindhouse cinema kind of like really colorful, kind of 70s colors. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I think that one of the things that I pay attention to and that overrules everything is how I feel about it. And I am more excited about the 70s than I was the 90s.
Really?
I think there's just and when we've kind of mentioned it online, we've had a very positive response. A lot of people want us to do the noughties, but that needs more time to marinate.
Yeah.
But in terms of like, you know, my own personal viewing habits, I'm watching tons of 70s movies and I'm watching them and going, this is incredible.
Yeah. The 70s is, I think it'll be. People have asked me to do stuff on the 70s. I'm really ensconced in the 80s on my channel, and there was so many horror films in the 80s, so many. And like you said, you could probably do more documentaries on the 80s, but the 70s, I always find, you know, you really have to keep digging and digging and digging to find this stuff. It's there, but it just isn't the volume that there was in the 70s. But I see that you can. I mean, there's still some great movies that you can talk about, and it'll be really cool to get that time capsule together. Even when you look at the In Search of Darkness documentaries that you've done, you did it at the right moment, because there's a lot of people that you've interviewed who are no longer with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we want to cover the 70s because it's something, honestly, we just want to do. But we're aware that a lot of people aren't around. But I think part of the value is, like, give an example, The Thing expanded.
Yeah.
We had Frank Darabont and Guillermo del Toro come into the studio, to just pay homage to the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Their way of looking at the film, and Stephen Colbert, for example, the way they're looking at the film and talking about it, and we're understanding their perspective, the vision that they see in the film illuminates our vision. It kind of, the analogy that I use is the same man doesn't stand in the same river twice. And I think it's the same with films. When you watch a film when you're young and you love it, and then you watch it at a different stage of your life, you can love it for different reasons. And there's certain films in our lives as film fans that endure, that we watch all the way through our lives, but we see it in different ways because we've got more life experience. And I think that at its very core, all of our work is about taking something you already love and giving you more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you attach what we do to IP that is timeless,
Yeah.
then you're never going to run out of ways to create value around that.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned The Thing expanded there, and I was really lucky to see a assembly cut, which I've spoken about on my channel. Openly, obviously, I've not gone into detail, but I've kind of bigged it up and mentioned that I was lucky enough to be chosen to look at this.
I'll post that check to you soon, okay, Dan?
I think it was back in November, December time.
Yeah,
and I absolutely loved it. Now, you tell me now that it's even better, that it's tighter, it's slicker, and you've actually managed to get hold of an additional talking head on there, which is there were two people missing. Okay.
Yeah.
There's two people missing from this documentary. One, I think, is difficult to get, but could be persuaded because his peers are on there. And then there's another one who we haven't seen or heard of in years.
You're talking about Kurt Russell and Rob Bottin. Okay?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. For me, Kurt Russell took us a year to get. Right. And this is easily the most expensive production. I mean, it's got an A-list Hollywood cast.
Mm-hmm.
I think The Thing Expanded is going to be the best film documentary ever made. And I've made some half decent ones.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's superior to Aliens Expanded because The Thing as a movie, because there's so much ambiguity, it opens itself for interpretation.
Yeah.
Therefore, it fits with the expanded kind of format much closer. So there's more room to explore and get noodly, get nerdy, but the Kurt Russell took us a year to get. Like, it's very difficult to get these elite Hollywood guys, right? Because they have layers and layers of management.
Yeah.
I mean, it's proper grown-up stuff, and he's still a heavy hitter. Like, he's a major Apple TV series. He's actually one of the last real movie stars.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed.
And the other one is Rob Bottin, and there's a whole story about we tried everything.
Could you actually get in touch with Rob Bottin? Because I've heard that's even impossible, pretty much.
So there's two things going on here. He hasn't given an interview in 30 years. He's left the industry. His close friends, which we interviewed, because we interviewed people that have never been interviewed before that assisted Rob on The Thing. They were fantastic.
Yeah.
And we talk about Rob and his legacy and what he's achieved. We also talk about the fact that it's his right to be a recluse. If he wanted to, he could be at every horror convention in the world, right? And earn a fortune doing it. He's not interested. He didn't respond. We tracked down multiple addresses, sent multiple letters, significant financial offers, went through his friendship circle, even asked our backers to make videos about why they want to see Rob Bottin. That's how we did everything.
Yeah.
John Carpenter couldn't help. Kurt couldn't help. Keith David, like the cast, the producer Stuart Cohen, like Joe Dante.
Was it they simply couldn't get hold of him, or
he really burnt out, and he went a bit. I want to be really respectful.
Yeah, sure.
Because the man wants to be private.
Yeah.
And I'm satisfied that we went above and beyond everything that we could possibly do to get someone. And ultimately, whenever we embark on these journeys, we never say we're going to get everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And Thing fans, and this is really for an educated audience, know that he's a recluse. You know, so
Of course.
But what one story is Joe Dante, who worked with Rob, asked Rob to be in his documentary, and Rob told him no.
There you go. I mean, it's disappointing, but as you say, you have to respect the guy's privacy like that.
Yeah, like and also it's like the TK Carter sadly passed away.
Yes,
Just
recently.
We were do
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were going to interview him. We were just in that final negotiation. He passed away. When we did Aliens Expanded, Bill Paxton we couldn't get because it's disappointing we can't get people who are, for whatever reason, unavailable. And that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, yeah. So what made you pivot from doing these kind of genre-wide explorations to single film deep dives? And are there any others that you have in the pipeline that you want to do deep dives on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can. This is actually what happened. I was on my way. I was flying out to LA, and I was going to the premiere of In Search of Tomorrow, which is our 5-hour mega documentary about 80s sci-fi, which has everybody in.
Yeah.
And Movie Web called it the best sci-fi documentary ever made. That's their words. But I'm really proud of that project. And so I'm on the plane and I'm thinking about how what we've done is we create this format where we explore this whole era and we just jump from movie to movie to movie. And it's like you go on this sort of journey of, I remember that. What was, and having all these insights and these different people show up. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to kind of completely invert that? So in my mind, and I knew Aliens was the one I wanted to do it with, right? And so in my mind, I remember scribbling on my pad when I was on the plane. And the idea was, imagine you had the full timeline of Aliens on your Final Cut Pro timeline.
Yeah.
Okay. But that timeline was in 3 dimensions. Okay. And so a bit like Minority Report, you could kind of dive in to a scene, deconstruct it, dive out, and I was like, well, that's what I want. I've got a really compelling vision. And then I wrote it all up. And then I went and saw my friend Ian Nathan, who I'd met when he was in Search of the Last Action Heroes. And I took him out for dinner and I said, you've never directed a documentary before, but you wrote Alien Vault and I really like you. And I think you're such a brilliant journalist. I really want you to work. I want you to do this with me. And he signed on, and the kind of rest is history. And I think that when I was looking at this format, I wasn't thinking, we're going to go and get James Cameron. I'm going to fly out to LA and spend a day with James Cameron. Right? Like that. I wasn't thinking that. I was almost thinking let's just get super noodly about the film. What happened was, as we started working on it, we realized we could reach some of the cast, and we
some
sort of, well,
you got everybody pretty much.
But this is how, what people don't understand is that we did the final pre-sale in 2024, and we still hadn't landed Sigourney.
Yeah.
And everyone in the comments where's Sigourney? Where's Sigourney? I'm like,
so you had James Cameron before you had Sigourney Weaver?
Yeah. When we did the assembly cut, we didn't have James Cameron.
Oh, really?
When we did the assembly cut, we didn't have James Cameron, Paul Reiser, Gail Ann Hurd, or Sigourney Weaver. Right?
Wow.
And the reviews we got from the backers for the assembly cut were phenomenal.
Yeah.
Okay? Even when we did the preview screening, we didn't have Sigourney in that cut, right? So what happened was Gail Ann Hurd agreed to do an interview, but she doesn't do interviews inside studios. She I think she's got a condition where she's worried about getting germs and stuff.
Right.
So she did the interview on the kind of the veranda of my colleague David Weiner, his house in Glendale, and they got on really well. So we're in the meeting and we're in the middle of a final pre-sale, and we're just like, the reps, Sigourney's reps are just ignoring us. We're just not getting any traction. We're running out of time. And I said to David, look, you got on well with Gail Ann Hurd. We need to do a Hail Mary and ask Gail can she get in touch with Sigourney, because we're not getting anywhere.
Yeah.
So we wrote a little note to Gail Ann Hurd, and the next day we had a date with Sigourney in New York.
Wow.
And we only had 4 days left of this pre-sale campaign when we put up the video. Hi, I'm Sigourney Weaver. You'll see me in Aliens Expanded. And it shut up all the haters, which is great.
Did you just record that out in the parking lot or something?
No, we filmed it in the studio in New York.
Okay, right?
Okay. The whole interview, full on makeup, everything.
Yeah,
she was amazing.
Yeah.
And it was a home run. And I think I'd had some successes with these documentaries, but that was really the first time. It wasn't the first time, but it was the first time that I realized that you need to back your ideas more.
Yeah.
Because Aliens Expanded was a maturity step for the evolution of CreatorVC. What it said is that we can access elite Hollywood circles as independent crowdfunding. Like, who does that?
Yeah.
No one else is doing that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, now with the cast for The Thing expanded, you've got Guillermo del Toro, Frank Darabont, Kurt Russell, John Carpenter. You've got all the surviving cast. It's just these, for super fans of The Thing, this is the last opportunity they'll ever have.
Yeah.
To be part and be part of that legacy.
Yeah.
You're a backer on that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right. You will be forever connected with it. You're going to be in the credits with all the people, and the way we do the documentary, it's like you're hanging out with them.
Yeah.
And having this whole conversation about the movie with them.
No, it's great, and both of them for me worked incredibly well. And I never, I always feel comfortable sitting down and watching those documentaries in one sitting. Even, do you know what I mean? I never in Search of Darkness is one of those things that I'll have on in the background here when I'm getting ready to do a stream. Just to get myself into that world and that mood.
People have it. We get emails from people who just say, we've had people get tattoos of In Search of Darkness.
Wow.
We've had people that have suffered trauma in their lives that use it as a comforter. There's people that put it on the background when they want to sleep.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, what happens is you have an idea and you put it out there, and then people respond to it in ways that you never imagined. One of the things that happened with In Search of Darkness is people used it as a kind of watch list.
Yeah.
So we would talk about movies that they hadn't watched. So I think from In Search of Darkness 2, we started to include a checklist of the films we covered, so people could just tick them off.
Yeah. Well, that's the one thing that I found about In Search of Darkness 90s, because I was never the biggest fan of the 1990s horror films. And I watched the first part that you did, and I was like, okay, fair enough, And the second part I thought was, I much prefer the 80s ones, I'll be honest with you. However, I was staggered at the amount of content on there and the amount of movies on there that I'd never seen or in some instances even heard of. And so it made me sit there as I'm watching the documentary and create my own list of things to go and seek out and watch, which I found fascinating, because I've always thought the 90s was a kind of a limp decade for horror.
Do you know what, right? This is a generation thing. So the core backer demographic for us are 40 to 60-year-old men in North America. That's
really?
Our audience, right? But when we did the validation for 90s horror, a big part of our audience really wanted it to happen, but they all skewed younger.
Yeah.
So the era that you and I grew up, we were sort of imprinted by 80s. So our relationship with it is kind of unique because we were exposed to it at a very developmental part of our lives.
Yeah.
And we had started to mature by the 90s, right? So we had different relationships with that era. Whereas people slightly younger, I would say maybe about 10 years younger than me, they really connect with the 90s in the way that we don't. And it's interesting because en masse, the critical reception to In Search of Darkness 90s was significantly better than the 80s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just go on Letterboxd
Mm-hmm.
and just like, it's 5-star, 5-star, 5-star. So it really connected. And this is the thing about the work we do, is that, you know, we cannot please everybody. Almost by design, we have to be very bullish on what this core audience wants. And that's part of our process. So before we ever, you know, commit to doing a project, we do it. We've got hundreds of thousands of people on our mailing list, right? And we validate it, you know, and we have very complex surveys.
Yeah.
Not complex. We've got very detailed surveys where we go, you know, like we get a real sense, because ultimately this, you know, CreatorVC can only exist if we deliver for this audience. And so that isn't about trying to create scale or trying to be a broadcaster. It's almost the opposite. The more narrow we get, you know, there's that famous essay by Kevin Kelly, who was the founder of Wired magazine. It's called 1,000 True Fans. And the world we're going into is so fragmented. So you've got very particular niche interests. What you know, you're not going to watch, you know, something for, you know, your super niche interest. Netflix aren't going to come along and do a big documentary about it, but people like us will. You know, if the niche is deep enough, you know, then we can actually serve that very specific audience. And, you know, Aliens was the same. We rolled that out. We went, and before we did anything, we went to all the fan groups and said, you are the Aliens fans.
Yeah.
Work with us. Just, you know, we're not doing any fundraising at this point. We just want to, we've written this synopsis. This is our vision for Aliens Expanded. Can you like share it with your audience? And that told us there was enough people. It told us that, one, people liked the idea, and two, there was enough people that we thought, yeah, we can make this work.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the process. So, you know, it's we really pay attention. And so it's interesting because the 90s for me aren't my favorite decade. It's the 80s, right? But I was really with those two documentaries. I'm really proud of what David Weiner did, because he really paid attention to the relationship we had with the backers.
Sure.
You know, and but we had people that loved the 80s that didn't support the 90s because they don't care about the decade as much.
Yeah. But I think that, you know, I almost didn't, because I've always been, as I said, I've always found the 90s kind of, horror for me was got, the slasher was gone, which is my favorite subgenre. That was practically gone until 96 with the 90s. And so I almost didn't back the 90s. And I thought, you know what, I'll get involved with this. I'll see what they can do.
I wouldn't have judged you, okay? Like, it's all, you know, but I think we had to work harder. This is another thing with this kind of business, is that you are attached to the IP.
Yeah.
And so you referred to the 90s as the lost decade.
Yeah.
Is how can you compete with the 80s?
Exactly.
So it's sort of, but there are so many gems there, and you know, like so we had to work a lot harder to maintain that bar.
Yeah.
Right. And ultimately, like, we know if people are unhappy with our work. And in fact, the biggest stressor for CreatorVC is that we know that the majority of our backer base really appreciates what we do, but the bar is here.
Yeah. Right.
And like, so we're always striving to lift it, but you can't please everybody all of the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, and you know, like, and it's like being any other creator. People will have their own opinions independent of yours. And, you know, isn't it great you get to share something? You know, I still think it's the best job in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Just back on the two expanded movies that you've done so far. So I read an article on LinkedIn, I think it was, of yours, about the fact that you got to meet James Cameron and you should meet your heroes, that kind of thing. For me, I mean, like, I thought it was great the way that you got him to, you peeled back the layers on him. You actually got him to confess at one point that he was a bit of an arse on the set of Aliens. The tea tray scene, the tea tray moment with and everything was just a
I
fantastic.
can relate to it.
Yeah,
I can relate to it. I've got so much admiration for James Cameron. Like, his work has had such an influence on my understanding of pop culture, and so you get to meet him, and we flew up. Me and Ian flew out to LA, and Ian did the most amazing. I mean, Ian was the editor of Empire magazine. He is like
I
a
remember.
top of the grade author, journalist. You can't get anyone better than him. And Cameron knew when they were doing the interview, this is a serious guy. I'm going to take this seriously. And we were only told we had half an hour. We ended up doing 90 minutes with him. And even then, he didn't want it to finish.
Yeah.
Right. And it was just a great experience in my life. And I said to him, listen, this whole project, like, thousands of people around the world have come together to just make this possible. And it was, I've got, a framed picture. It sounds silly, but it was just a great moment. And to hear that he really likes it has been amazing. Gail-Ann Hurd, on her Valhalla Entertainment Company account, they're always repping Aliens Expanded as like the definitive work on Aliens. Yeah,
fantastic.
if you go onto Twitter now and just scroll down, you'll see it. And that's wild to me. And we hear from the cast, like, at conventions, people are going up with their Aliens Expanded. So I feel like that particular product was something which acts as a bridge between the fandom and the IP. It's like, this is the backers on this will be immortalized with something they really care about. And we won the Rondo Award for Best Documentary. It was a huge success for us, and it opened up Hollywood.
And then the other one, which obviously a lot of the audience that I have will be interested in hearing about, was actually getting John Carpenter for The Thing expanded as well. How was that experience? Because he can be a little bit unpredictable at times, I believe.
You know what, right? Like, his team, his agent, him, it was just we'd already worked with him because he was in Search of Darkness.
Yes, yeah.
And then we went back and we said, look, he was the only interview we did before we launched.
Was it difficult to get him to participate in Search, or was it a case of money talks and he's there?
No, in Search of Darkness, he did it as a favor to one of our producers, and also that Search of Darkness it was the hype.
Yeah,
it was the hype, right? So and Robert Englund was in Search of Darkness too, and he said, look, I want to do it because In Search of Darkness was a hit, and I want to be in the hit. Yes, you can be in it, Robert Englund, right? But with Thing Expanded, it's Thing fans know that it flopped and it derailed Carpenter's career, and now it's considered a masterpiece, and it's on the Mount Rushmore of horror films.
Yeah.
But John, I was with him for 3 hours in his office when we were doing the interview. And the two things that I took away from that experience was he really liked the poster. He was like, this is so cool. And I was like, wicked, right? And
I take it you sent him one.
No, I brought them out and I said, oh, could you sign it? Right? I've got them in a tube down there. But he was like, this is really cool. And the two things that I took away from that was the youthfulness that he has. Like, it was like chatting to you, right? Great humility, right? And he's deeply hurt by this experience.
And that really comes across in the documentary that he's, because it cost him his next gig. He was in pre-production on Firestarter, and they fired him because of the thing. It's
crazy, I'm just grateful he trusted us with this particular story, and he is phenomenal, and he gives this documentary so much flavor. We couldn't have done it without him, and it was a great. I'm so grateful that I've had some meaningful conversations with artists whose work has shaped my enjoyment of pop culture really significantly. And he was just cool. He wasn't grumpy. He's not that guy that's going to be like, oh, but authentic, and just like we were just hanging afterwards. We were just chatting. We were just it was just cool. And in October, me and the guys working on it, we all flew out to New York to watch him perform again. So I'd seen him perform back in 2018. It was just
Me too.
we just wanted to, we're fans. Like we just wanted to be like, this is he's getting on now. He's 76, right? This might be the last opportunity to see him perform. And we're there, and it was like going to church. It was like we just want to be here because we value everything. And the thing is, his films get better with age. The Thing is part of the film zeitgeist now, because of the era politically we're in, because of the themes. And it's just been admitted to the Library of Congress, National Film Registry, the Library of like it's John just got his Hollywood Walk of Fame. Keith David just got his Hollywood Walk of Fame. Like, it's sort of, we couldn't get better timing to revisit this film.
Yeah.
I think it's the best work we've ever done, like hands down. Like, I'm watching it. I was watching an hour from it a couple of nights ago where they discussed the blood test scene.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it's really fucking good.
It is. It is.
Yeah. I was like, this is, I'm just happy. My job is to find the people that want to do the things I want to do.
I think the thing for me with The Thing Expanded is that, I've spent a lot of years watching documentaries, listening to commentaries, reading old articles in Fangoria, literally looking for every bit of information that I can on this movie. And I still came away learning a shit ton of stuff from it. I was absolutely flabbergasted with some of the stuff. Things that, after watching it for so many times, things that are right under my nose in this movie that I've never spotted before, that all make sense now. And I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but when you see this documentary, there are things in there are tiny little nuances and things that characters do that all make sense and add up when the interviews are taking place. This is why this happens.
I want to caveat that the cut you saw is light years away from how polished this is now, and it didn't have Kurt Russell. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
like him being in this. I mean, we were with him for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right, and he was dropping. He said I've never told this story before.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
But I think that when we do these projects, people are always looking for like, wow, what kind of, what's new, right? And we don't set out. Our mission isn't really to uncover something you haven't heard. And it's nice when we do. It's a byproduct of the kind of indulgent lengths. This is a 5-hour documentary. But our goal is to have this kind of peer experience. So it's not just you, it's you and all the other super fans nerding out on every scene of this movie with the cast, and they're all nerding out together. And what we want is for you to watch The Thing after this documentary and it feel like a new movie.
Yeah.
And that's the goal. This is 2 years in the making.
Yeah.
So it's and the team is the best team I've ever worked with.
So in terms of moving forward, you have Slasher Trash, which is coming out, which I know a lot of my audience will be excited about because we cover a lot of slashers on this channel. Can you give us some insights into Slasher Trash?
Yeah. Okay. So this is a cool story. So I pay attention to what's happening in the horror spheres, and there was this Facebook group called Slasher Trash that was just, hit 100,000 followers, 150,000. It's over 200,000 now, right? And I could see it, and the way they were talking about the milestones, they were just, and it was all organic. So it was just, I was like, wow, this subgenre is really happening. And so I reached out, and it turned out the guy that ran it, Gareth, was in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So I approached him and I said, look, we should work together. You've got an audience, and no one's really done a really strong slasher-focused documentary in years, like 20 years. And even then, I am not that much of a fan of the other ones, and they haven't done it in our style. So it was a combination of things. So Gareth being so cool and like someone I want to work with, he's been an absolute gold through this whole process. And he is like the super slasher fan. It's part of his identity. And he's just a super lovely guy. And then I went out and I recruited, I love working with film journalists, because going from film journalists to directing a documentary isn't too much of a jump. And I really learned this when I worked with David Weiner, because David Weiner is just like, he really set the bar in terms of how he scripts these documentaries. And even when Ian Nathan joined me, I was like, this is how David does it, right? And then Ian did it in his own way, and I've just been really blessed with grown-ups that are kind of masters of what they do, and we're just taking what they do into a new format. So I went out and recruited Michael Gingold, who was the former editor of Fangoria. He was a contributor in the first In Search of Darkness and wanted to work with him for ages. He's like the OG horror film journalist, knows everybody loves him. Now I'm starting to see the rough cuts coming at the moment. I think you're going to love it. Like it's like, and the reason it's called Slasher Trash is because we really want to dive into like the B movie slashers, the slasher slashers, the kind of stuff that the slasher heads are really into. And like, we ran the pre-sale for it last year, and it had a really great response with thousands of backers come on board. And we've surveyed them. We're paying attention to what they want, and it's a great team. And also, I must mention the producer Daniel Richardson, who produced Terabytes. Like, he has taken even more leadership on this project, and I'm just monitoring it. And I know what it looks like when a team is really in flow.
Yeah.
And these guys are like, there's the Slack channel for Slasher Trash is hilarious, right? And they're all kind of geeking out on each other, and so I'm very excited. So that will come out towards the end of the year.
Excellent. I mean, the one I'm really excited about, obviously I'm excited for The Thing, and I'm excited to see what differences there are to this, which you tell me there are huge differences to it.
I think that, well, there will be. It's like, certainly the rough cut that you saw was really rough. Like, Ian didn't want me to send it out. I was like, we have to.
How do you go about, like, just skipping back to The Thing again? How do you go about? You've got your assembly there, and then all of a sudden you realize you've got Kurt Russell. How do you put an interview together that then you're able to drop in at various points throughout the movie? Have you always kind of held space for?
Yeah. So it's actually easier. Like, we tend to do the two interviews we do at the end of a process are the headline talent and like the top pundits, because the pundits are there to fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
And the headline talent, where you've constructed like the foundation, and we did the same thing with James Cameron. We did the same thing with Sigourney Weaver. Right. So we kind of have this agile methodology with it, where we kind of, and you got to remember, with what we do, you don't ever know if you're going to land that person.
Yeah.
I mean, I moved heaven and earth to get Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my career. And I'm really proud we got it. And I'm really proud he was amazing.
Good.
And after the shoot in LA, he just hung out with the team for about 20 minutes.
Oh, excellent.
And just shooting the shit, and like, but this is like an A-list cast. And this, you're watching this on Thursday. We will have launched on Tuesday, so you'll see the trailer.
Yeah.
You can make your own judgments. I'm really proud of this film, and I know what it's taken, the commitment, because you're just dealing with so much uncertainty. Getting this level of talent is incredibly difficult. No one else does it.
Yeah.
Who else is doing it? It's so hard. And but the people who are working on this project, they will look back in a few years and go, what are the projects that define my career? And this will be one of them. And it'll be the same for me.
So white whale then, white whale time. Bruce Campbell. Who was the other one? There was Bruce Campbell, Clive Barker, and Rob Bottin.
Okay, so because Clive Barker, from what I understand,
he's not too good at the moment. Yeah.
All right, and we worked very hard to try and get him, but you know, I don't think he's going to do anything. You know, we've seen some convention appearances where he's been literally wheeled out, and it's almost exploitative.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Bruce Campbell, I just don't think he does a lot of documentaries. He used to years and years ago, but I think the opportunity's passed, you know, for him. Rob Bottin was my white whale for The Thing Expanded, but he is a social recluse.
Yeah.
You know, he hasn't given an interview for 30 years. And I also think that period of his life caused immense trauma for him. And ultimately, I mean, there's people, when we do the expanded formats, there are people we can't interview because they passed away.
Yeah.
TK Carter, who we were negotiating with, who was about to sign on.
Yeah.
We'd emailed him 3 days. We were conversating with him 3 days before he passed away suddenly. And he was in his 60s.
Sad.
He wasn't right. And I'm like, well, that's out of our control. Rob Bottin is out of our control.
Yeah.
I think, and I understand it from a kind of backer perspective, but if people don't want to be interviewed, and there's no amount of money that can change, we tried everything with Rob.
Yeah.
And I'm satisfied there is nothing else we can do. We even spoke to Joe Dante, and Joe Dante was like, I asked Rob to be in my documentary, and Rob didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And also, he's like in his own world.
I don't think they got him for RoboDoc either, did they? I don't think
no. He hasn't done an interview for 30 years. He'll never, I don't think you'll ever hear from him ever again. Rob could be a top guest at every horror convention.
Yeah.
He could earn $250,000 a year just by turning up to conventions. He doesn't want to do it.
No.
Some artists are wired that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just and you kind of, we went through every angle. We had people emailing us saying, "Oh, I've got Rob's number," like finding addresses where we thought he was, sending FedEx, signed FedEx, like even getting our backers to make videos about why they want Rob.
Yeah.
We even went to his inner circle, and they were like, "Look, we always get asked. Rob doesn't want. It's almost traumatic.
Yeah.
To revisit this period. So there's a certain point where you go, well, okay, but we talk about Rob a lot. We've interviewed some of his assistants who are fantastic, who've never been interviewed before, that have unique insights into him and his process.
Yeah,
and we honor him. And I think the way I would look at it is, when we did Aliens Expanded, obviously we couldn't get Bill Paxton. It would have contributed so much. But
of course,
one of the moments for me in that documentary that made me weep when I first watched it was the Bill Paxton tribute. James Cameron saying, "I just wish I could call him and tell him I love him." So what I'm saying is, like, it's interesting because you asked me earlier about where do I see this going, right? And the holy trinity of expanded Gen X sure things are Aliens, The Thing, and Terminator. We have a plan and a synopsis for Terminator. We're going back out at the end of March to Jim Cameron and Gallan Hurd to get their blessing, to say, listen, can we, because we can't just do it and hope it, like, we go to them now and say, hey, do you mind if we do this? But our idea is we want to have 2 parts to Terminator Expanded, and do Terminator, and then it's just a 3-year project essentially, and it'll
Wow.
be right. But then beyond that, I might not call it expanded, but I think there's enormous value in getting really noodly about films,
Mm-hmm.
bringing the best speakers in the world together to deconstruct them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's certain films where everyone's dead, right?
Or a bit like Chain Reactions, the recent.
Well, Chain Reactions is an interesting one. So I watched that, and funnily enough, there's a connection because Ian was in Alien Memory, which was Alexander Philippe's Alien, which I didn't love it, if I'm honest, but it's great. I think it's brilliant, and he's got his niche.
Mm-hmm.
Chain Reactions I watched it, and I have to say I really enjoyed it, and that's all I've got to say. It was sort of the value. This is the point. The value was in educated speakers interpreting what they saw. Now, I'm playing in my mind at the moment with a brand new format where I can explore movies like Jaws, like The Shining, right? But at an angle that's never been done. But these aren't making ofs. These aren't a cast reunion. It's something entirely different. And that really excites me. Like before I did this, I went for a walk and I was thinking about it and, jotting down ideas about how I want to approach it, because ultimately in my business, we attach ourselves to IP that endures. And the value in what we do is to deliver that kind of super fan audience more value from that IP. In that scenario, it's like, how can you understand this film in a new way? How can you look at it? How can you break down the scenes, the blocking, the kind of get super noodly with it all? And that is something that really excites me, and I can see it. It's kind of the enjoyment. Like there's a channel at the moment on YouTube called Cobwebs, and the guy is just so enthusiastic, and we've worked with him on a couple of projects, and he actually is on the Blu-ray for the 90s horror one, and we did this Voices of Darkness extra, and he's in it. But I value his excitement about old movies.
Yeah.
And the way he talks about them makes me want to watch them again. My classic example, one of the best contributors who's been in tons of our documentaries, is the editor of Fangoria, Phil Nobile Jr., right?
Mm-hmm.
I could listen to that guy talk about movies forever.
Yeah.
The way he will talk about a film reshapes how I look at it.
Yeah.
And even what you're doing with this channel, you're into the conversation, you're part of it. You're part of the discourse, which is not just focused on new films, but actually goes back and let's nerd out about this again. Because again, I'm going to go back to this analogy that we are not, films exist in an infinite timeline. And we exist in a kind of timeline where we are constantly evolving. So you never see the same film really in the same way.
Yeah.
More than once. And, there's certain films that I go to. There's two actually that I revisit, every year. Donnie Darko and Purple Rain, right? They're two of my very, films that I adore. Every time I watch Donnie Darko, I see something brand new. Right, I relate to it differently, and I become closer to it. Purple Rain now is like when they play at the Prince Charles Cinema, I'm always there because it's like going time traveling back to 1984, and now I watch it just for the ambience, just for the street shots and the colors, it's sort of, so there's huge value in revisiting classic cinema. And that's what I want to do, because I think for people that are super fans of that, there'll never be enough material.
No, absolutely.
And our mission is to deliver something which is, exceptional.
If you have heard of a YouTube channel called The Daily Jaws, there's a great guy on that channel, Ross, I think his name is, and for the 50th anniversary, he did something along the lines of what you were talking about there, was to get all these different talking heads from all different kinds. I mean, he had BBC newsreaders, he had Slash. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to give their thoughts and opinions and first-time experiences of watching these movies. And I think, you know, that's what a lot of the time what this channel is about. When I talk to people, I love to get inside people's minds and figure out exactly how were they feeling the same as I did when they first saw The Thing. You mentioned today, we were chatting beforehand earlier about The Thing, and you always remember the was it the arms sequence. I remember seeing that. My dad was a policeman, and they had a social club and a bar in the police station, can you believe? And it was playing on the TV in there, and I would have been 9 or 10 years old, and it was playing on the TV, and I remember seeing that moment. And it's all about, a lot of these memories are all about where you were, who you were with, what you were doing, and that's what makes them so special a lot of the time and sort of unforgettable. And I think it's really interesting. I think you're onto something there. It's really interesting to hear what other people's thoughts and opinions are about when they first saw them.
It's that shared experience. And it's funny because the Daily Jaws, because I've watched a lot of those.
Yeah.
You know, that channel exists because the fan base for that film has endured, you know, and 50 years, they just had the 50th anniversary. So if you want to do, like, there's been tons of amazing documentaries on Jaws.
Yeah.
If you will cover Jaws, you've got to come at it as a different angle.
Yeah.
And the angle that I actually want to take is about is getting super nerdy and deconstructing the scenes, deconstructing why things were like getting, and then bringing like really high-end motion graphics. Like, just, I've got a real vision for how I want it to be. But ultimately, if we covered Jaws with this new format, the goal is to just deliver something which is hugely entertaining. Ultimately, it has to be. It can't be dry. It can't be academic. It has to be something that you go, oh, that was awesome. Like, now I'm going to look at Jaws in a different way. You know? And I think that that's all I'm going to do.
Yeah, yeah. We have a lot of Halloween fans on this channel. A lot of John Carpenter fans as well. A lot of Halloween fans, and the one thing that's missing in the Halloween library, I guess, is an all-encompassing documentary that covers the entire franchise, like Never Sleep Again and Crystal Lake Memories. Yeah. Have you thought about tackling the Halloween franchise in any way?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's sort of there's too many ideas, right, and too little time. So I wouldn't want to, like, tackling the entire franchise is like boiling the ocean. And also because they're so, like, do you bring in the Rob Zombie one? Like, it's sort of, it becomes, I don't see that as like a cohesive thing. It's like with the Terminator Expanded.
Yeah.
Our vision is just to concentrate on the first two films and forget anything else exists. Right? Just that universe, that Cameron universe.
Yeah. So,
Halloween is a film that I would explore, but I would explore Halloween, right? I would take that film and deconstruct it. And if this happens when John is available, obviously, I mean, we couldn't do it. I wouldn't want to do it when John is available and he wouldn't be able to do it. Like, but at the same time, what can John, like, John cannot tell you a thing about Halloween that he's not said
absolutely
over the past 50 years.
Yeah.
So he's there as a kind of, he's there because the audience would expect him, but the value is in the perception of that film and how it shifted. And it's not just people talking about why they liked it. Like, you have to be, if we do something on this, it has to be like here.
Yeah.
It has to be like, we've taken a very bullish stance on this film and we're going to deliver an unrivaled interpretation. So you're going to look at this film and it would have to have like top people in it as well.
Yeah.
One of the things that's great, and I go back to this, is with The Thing, we had Guillermo del Toro, but with Frank Darabont, with In Search of Darkness, we have so many amazing filmmakers. Mike Flanagan, is amazing. Like, and you can feel the knowledge. Alex Winter from Benton, like so knowledgeable. Like these, you know, like there's real value, and these are the guys.
Corey Taylor as well. You know, you had
Corey. I've got a wicked story about Corey. Right, so Corey. Right, so when I was doing the first In Search of Darkness, we had this reward tier where you could pay a little bit of cash. I think it was about 1,500 quid or something. You could be in it.
Mm-hmm.
So there was 3 people I remember that signed up. There was this metal guy, Mike Redmond, really cool guy who was like in Denmark or something, and he signed on to be in it. And then we had, you know, Joe Bob Briggs?
Yes.
You know, like Darcy, the male girl.
Oh yeah.
She signed on to be in it. She paid to be in it, right? And she, like, you know, we knew who she was. It was like brilliant. And then I had this third email address. I was like, oh, I don't reckon, you know, who is this? So when we finished the crowdfunding, I wrote to this email address saying, hi, you know, we're going into production now. Thanks so much for buying this reward tier. Do you mind telling me who you are and what you do? And about half an hour later, I got an email saying, hi, I'm Corey Taylor. I'm the lead singer of Slipknot. And I was like, right. And at the time, so this is 2018. No, this was 2019. In 2018, Slipknot was the highest grossing touring band in the world.
Yeah.
And Corey, who's been in a bunch of our documentaries, he is such a cool guy. He ended up doing 3 collector editions with him.
I remember,
I went out to meet him in Las Vegas, and he was just like the most un-rock star type of rock star.
Mm-hmm.
And legit, he could be rock star. Like, we had Gene Simmons come down, right, for In Search of Tomorrow, and he was like fiddling with the book. Like, he was just like that rock star aura. But Corey, just honestly, like, he's one of the kind of famous people that I've met, that I've worked with, that I've gone, you're a little bit special, if I'm honest. And you know, but again, he was there the same way you were there. You were there for the same reason, because we give him a list of movies, like fucking loads, right? Sorry, you might have to bleep me out. Like loads of movies, and he's like a photographic memory. You just know. The other guy, Chris Jericho.
Oh, the wrestler.
WWF.
Yeah,
right. Like he was the same. Like, you know, this is, you know, they're educated and they have their own profiles, but like they're coming at this the same way that we are. So it's a great level.
Of course, yeah. So I put it out there to the Only Stands audience that you were coming on. We've had a bunch of questions submitted. Have you got time to look at some of those?
Really good. I joined your Facebook group, and everyone, I had a look at that. I think there was about 20 questions, and I just it's just really, this is a lovely opportunity for me. I don't really do a lot of interviews. I'm in the background, right? I'm just the guy that kind of puts it together. I always push out my directors who are far more articulate than me. So this is, you know, a lovely thing.
Okay. Oh, good. Right. Okay. So the first question is from Alan Meggs, and he says, why is it that horror is the one genre that always seems to stay relevant? The others all seem to go through periods of irrelevance. For example, comedy is dead almost at present, and horror is pretty much leading the way as cinema shows some signs of recovery.
Yeah. I read that question. It's a really good question. I don't know. Right? But I've got a theory, right? So when the world is a bit fucked, right? Horror. One of the good things when the world is fucked is horror. You know, the horror movies are going to be on.
Yeah.
So the part of the reason why The Thing is so prevalent in film discourse right now is because its themes are universal, and we've gone back to that authoritarianism that was in the Reaganism.
Yeah.
We're now in America, and regardless of where it doesn't matter, but that's the reaction. And horror, unlike a lot of other films, all films have it to a degree. They are of their time, but horror responds to the more, you know, the kind of societal negativity and paranoia and fear in a much more reactive way. And that's partly why I think, and also you've got to say, over the last like 2 or 3 years, there's been some absolute bangers.
Yeah, there is. It is a genre that's pretty bomb-proof. And
but also the audience, there isn't another audience like the horror fans. Like, you don't go to a comedy film convention, do you?
No, you don't. It's kind of very similar to rock and metal. You know, rock and metal have been around since its inception, and it's not going away anywhere. Okay, it kind of dips in and out a little bit, but it's always there in the background, and it always has these kind of incredibly loyal fans, which is the same with horror. You know, horror fans are incredibly loyal to the genre, and so
there's no one like the horror community.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've got to know it really well. I mean, we have like 87,000 followers on our Instagram, so we're constantly communicating across our horror socials. If you include The Thing, and like maybe 250,000 followers.
Wow,
right? So we kind of like listen a lot. We have software that when anyone comments, we see it. So we're just constantly kind of taking this on board. And the relationship between the horror fan and the work, there is something really sacred about it, especially the older stuff. And it's interesting because you mentioned your friend Zara, and what's her handle? Scary Zara.
That's right. Yeah, Scary Zara Mary. Yeah, who you met a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah. So I said to her, I was watching this. Zara is absolutely typical of someone that has a unique relationship with the genre, who's leaned in.
Yeah.
And said, actually, I don't just want to be a fan. I want to be someone who is going to contribute to the discourse. Right. And, you know, you have to be completely compelled to put yourself out there, almost like what you're doing.
Yeah.
You have to be like, there's something here which is so tied into my identity that I want to spend this time communicating and building a community where I can share the discourse. Right. And that only really happens with horror. You get sci-fi stuff. Sci-fi is adjacent, but sci-fi fans are very different to horror fans.
Yeah.
You know, and also, you know, sort of that I've learned so much about horror fans that our work is so shaped by them.
Okay, moving on to the next question. Stephen Green.
Quicker answers.
Yeah. Stephen Green says, with the 80s being such an iconic era for horror, does Robin foresee a time when horror movies will be the #1 genre again? And can modern day movies attract a big following with documentaries, etc., being made about them in 40 years' time, like the classics we hold so dearly?
Yes. Right. So I think that what you need is time. You need 30 years. There's a kind of 30-year window, a nostalgic cycle, well documented. So Spielberg and his ilk were inspired by the 50s. You know, Spielberg and Cameron were inspired by the 50s movies, and Joe Dante, you know. And now the new generation of filmmakers that are doing really clever stuff, they were influenced by the 90s.
Yeah.
You know, you get a sort of 30-year cycle. So absolutely. And you know, even in the last couple of years, there's been some genuinely great films. And I think it's harder now to make genuinely great films because there's a lot of friction in that film industry now. It's weird because on one hand, it's never been easier.
Yeah.
And on another, there's a huge threat landscape around this as well. But, you know, I think that you need to look at it through the prism of nostalgia. Nostalgia is an incredibly powerful force because it's like I always talk about it like we are time traveling back to who we were when we first encountered these stories, right? And there's parts of our experience as adults, husbands and fathers, and, you know, like that. It's it's a very comforting feeling to revisit it. Right?
Yeah.
And I actually, most of the conversations I have with my kind of friendship circle who are horror fans are about old movies. Very rarely do I get noodly about new movies. I'm not a film critic. I'm like, that was really good. I really enjoyed it. But in 20 years' time, when they talk about that film, they will have created all this context around it.
Yeah.
You know, there'll be this mythology. There's
course.
this mythology around Jaws. There's this mythology around Halloween.
Yeah.
They're kind of sacred, right? And it's because of the distance we've had from them, right? My view is that IP and great cinema, if it's truly great, it grows in value between where we are now and when it was made. Like, the longer that is, the more valuable it becomes to the people that were imprinted on it. So, you know, we're Gen X. In 10 years' time, your memories of a film that you watched in the 80s, that's going to be more valuable to you.
Absolutely.
Because it reconnects you to who you were when you were back then. You know, and that's what's
it's happening now. I mean, you know, I was chatting last night about the fact that, you know, somebody was saying, you know, do you enjoy buying these 4K videos? And my memory of a lot of these horror films, particularly during the Nasties period, was of, you know, third or fourth generation VHSs tracking all over the place.
You have to work for it, yeah.
Exactly. And nowadays, me, you know, buying a 4K of, I don't know, The Burning or My Bloody Valentine, it's like watching that movie for the first time again, as it was intended, you know, not as it was not intended on a VHS that's knackered, basically. So there's loads
of movies that I haven't watched. So The Burning, I watched for the first time maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah,
I really loved it.
It's
I
brilliant.
went to the Prince Charles, and for the first time, this is maybe like a month ago, I went to see Sleepaway Camp for the first time.
That's great fun as well.
And also, that audience is so clued in. So you're watching it, a really amazing audience as well. And so I think that was like a 4K presentation.
Yeah,
but
terrific.
It's an old movie, but it was new to me.
Yeah.
And Tom Savini, that's his quote from In Search of Darkness too. He's like, they're not old movies if you've never seen them before.
Exactly.
I tell you what, a movie that I saw last year for the first time, which absolutely blew my mind and haunted me, was Carnival of Souls from the 60s.
Oh yeah. I've seen it.
You know that thing where you go and see a movie, then you go straight on IMDb.
Yeah.
And you read the trivia.
That's a great film.
Yeah, like it really stuck with me. I was like, wow, I have to buy that now. I want to get it.
At the moment, I'm going down an anthology route of old 70s anthology movies, and I'm discovering some absolute gems at the moment, stuff that I've never seen before. There's always stuff that you've missed in the past. It's great fun going backwards and rediscovering old titles that you missed the first time round. I absolutely love it.
That's the most enjoyment I have within In Search of Darkness. So we were talking just before we started that I'm going through all the 1970s horror movies, and I'm just having fun. Like, I'm really enjoying it. And I'm enjoying, in some sense, the innocence.
Yeah.
I watched a movie at the end of last year, which I'd never seen. I'm going to screw up the title. It's the something Manchester Morgue.
Oh, Living Dead in Manchester Morgue.
I thought that was amazing. I was like, how have I missed this? This is amazing. This is like, I was on Slack with my team going, has anyone else seen this? This is really good. We need to cover this 100%.
It was one that I saw back in the Nasties period, and then recently bought it on DVD and watched it, and had fun with it. It's good. It's good.
Gory. There's moments of threat.
Oh god, yeah.
There's something hugely indulgent about it. Like, it feels like a very safe space. The other film that I've been watching a lot of, and it's my second viewing, and I'm halfway through it, and I'm reading the book for the first time, is Salem's Lot, the Toby Hooper TV version. And everyone knows that one scene which gives everyone childhood trauma. But like, I love just the world.
Oh, it's terrific.
World building. And like, it's just, there's something, and I was watching it, like the kids were in bed, and I'm just watching it, and I'm like, I'm just really enjoying myself.
I remember watching it on the telly when it first was aired in the late 70s, early 80s, something like that. It was, it's great. And I think Arrow have got a brand new 4K.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next question, which is Jason Pierce. He says he's got two questions. He says, was there a particular obscure horror movie you wanted to add to the 80s and 90s docs but couldn't due to not being able to speak to the cast or crew? And what is your own favourite 80s or 90s horror film?
Oh man, that's so okay. The first question, if I'm being really honest, I think we added everyone that we wanted. It wasn't, we wouldn't, how we decide, it's really David, In Search of Darkness at this stage is David Weiner's franchise. Like, I cannot take anything away. Like he, you know, this is his series, right? So he decides what films go in. And a lot of that decision making does come down to who we can get and who we can't. But that 80s trilogy, it was, you know, we didn't not get anyone. Like we kind of got everyone, really. We got enough people to cover everything we wanted. So I can't think of a film that we didn't include. But the second part of that question is what was my favorite one? And I've got like a rotation. Like my favorite filmmaker, if you take out Carpenter and Cameron and like
the obvious ones,
the filmmaker that is my spirit animal, that I think, oh, like I would love to be like you, is Larry Cohen.
Oh wow,
like
the Stuff.
Yeah, so the Stuff is a seminal film for me. We were the last people to interview Larry Cohen before he passed.
Oh wow.
I read a couple of books on Larry Cohen. I like quirky.
He's
Larry
quite the
Cohen,
character.
I love that though, and he was, you know, like I just admire the guy, right?
Yeah.
And there's a new grindhouse cinema in London called the Nickel, and I went to watch Q, the Winged Serpent last year.
That's great fun.
There was a bit for like 10 minutes where they're just chatting shit, right, to fill up the screen time.
Yeah, yeah.
And Larry Cohen just admits it in the commentary. They're like, we just needed it to get to this piece. But it's amazing. Like he's just got something. And so The Stuff is a very special film for me. When I was putting together In Search of Darkness, I went and set up a meeting with the artist Graham Humphreys.
Absolutely.
Did the artwork for the UK, The Stuff, and he did the artwork for In Search of Darkness as well, the first one.
Evil Dead, Elm Street, he's done them all, yeah.
All right. And so I remember meeting him in the Hospital Club in Covent Garden, and I went in so nervous, and I had my copy of the Blu-ray saying, oh, by the way, can you do the poster? But before you do that, can you just sign my Blu-ray copy of The Stuff? But so the other movie that I collect memorabilia on, right, and I don't know why, is Peter Jackson's Bad Taste.
Okay.
So the Bad Taste. So my other kind of filmmaker that I nerd out about, I've got books about, is Alex Cox. So okay. Alex Cox
Repo Man.
Repo Man. He made Repo Man, but he hosted Movie Drone.
Yeah.
Right. That's what introduced me to Bad Taste. And I recently bought a bootleg 6K transfer of Bad Taste, where the guy had put he discovered all these extras and like a rare talk from the 90s, Peter Jackson talking through it. It's got the sound and I watched it, and I've got a 100-inch TV. I was watching it. I was like, this looks amazing. And I've got like the German media book and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And what that film does, there's so many, I mean, I don't have a favorite because I love this era. I mean, look, my life changed forever when I did In Search of Darkness. It was my first real success. And that was driven by a love of like all the movies. But there's certain movies that hit you at certain times. And what I love about Bad Taste is it took Peter Jackson 4 years to make. And you know, he is arguably a generational great filmmaker. He's up there with Cameron, and you know, like, how do you go from that to that?
Yeah,
really, right? And but every few years I revisit Bad Taste, and I just have so much fun with it.
Oh, it's great fun. Actually, as a young kid, there were parts of that movie actually made me feel physically ill.
It's crazy. And now we look at it, it looks so funny.
Well, it's the guy's head split in half at the start. It made me feel sick as a kid when I first saw that. I would have been like 15 or 16 or something, and I was like, that's just so gross looking. It really is.
I appreciate humor now as an adult, and I love the fact that it just feels so earthy and like we could go and spend the weekend and we can make our own bad taste.
Yeah.
And there's something really. It's the same thing with Larry Cohen. There's this kernel of affection and kind of brilliance there. That's what I cling on to. That's why I think that's what, if they bring out a 4K of Bad Taste, I'll buy it.
Everybody's waiting for that. That and Brain Dead. Pull your fingers out. Stop making black and white Beatles documentaries. Just bring back your originals there. Do them in 4K. That's what we want. Sign that.
Yeah.
Okay, next question is from Jordan Stevenson. Says, I'd like to ask Robin, what was his main inspiration behind making The Thing Expanded, which I think we've covered a little bit beforehand.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, like it was the natural. So we did Aliens Expanded, and back in February 2024, just before it was released, I took Ian to see The Thing at the BFI, right? And I knew I was like, I wanted to do this next. Okay. And I took him to the BFI, and it was a Saturday night. This is a 40-something-year-old film. And Saturday night in London at the BFI, in the main screen, NFT1, right? Packed. And a lot of the people there had never seen The Thing before. And we watched the movie, and we heard the shrieks from some of the scares, and people were reacting to it in real time. And I was like, this is a powerful fucking movie still.
Yeah.
Right. And then we talked about it, and we were like, look, this expanded format is made for The Thing.
Yeah.
Because of what we talked about, the ambiguity. So that was the inspiration. And also it's a film that, again, it has endured, and it's got multiple storylines.
Yeah.
Not just what the film is, but the story of John Carpenter, the story of the cast, it's sort of like it's The Thing Expanded is the greatest love letter to this film.
Yeah.
It's not a critical analysis. It's like, man, we're just going to have so much fun on this journey. And, like we're doing a lot of work with press right now with Thomas Waits.
Okay.
Plays Windows.
Yes. Yeah.
And he's joining us on the kind of promo tour for The Thing Expanded. And
cool.
He came and hung out with us when we went to New York. And, it's when you do these projects, you go all in, like it takes over your life. It's interesting. I watched Aliens for the first time last week since making Aliens Expanded, and I've had to unwrap the 4K, so I bought the Blu-ray and I just hadn't watched it. And there was enough time where I could just watch it again because I'd forgotten. So I haven't seen the documentary in ages. So I've kind of like, but I can't watch The Thing right now because I'm so embedded in it. But that's so the inspiration for it was like, there's only so many movies we can still do like this. I think it's Aliens, The Thing, and Terminator.
Yeah. Would it have been RoboCop had they not done RoboDog?
Well, we had Verhoeven in Search of Tomorrow, and he was amazing, right? But RoboDog, I've never watched it, right? All I've heard is that it's just a fantastic series, right? And I don't really know the guys. We interacted a couple of times, and I think that it took 7 years to make.
Yeah, it was a long time.
A long time. And like, sort of, the short answer is probably not. We've interviewed most of the cast because of other projects that we've done, but we would never. You can't. I mean, RoboDoc. I mean, they took. You can see the time and passion that they've put into it, right? And I will get around to watching it, but there'd be no point. You're never going to get everyone together. You can't tackle that film, and I think that they did a phenomenal job, and you can't get that time again.
Yeah.
And also the moment's past.
Yes. Yeah.
RoboCop was part of that 80s revival.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, you know, I don't think the team would want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Next question is from Brandon Collins. 2 questions. He says, do you think you will license In Search of Darkness 90s to Shudder at any point? And have you considered doing a documentary about 80s and 90s thrills? I like this question. 80s and 90s thrills like Jagged Edge, The Fugitive, Fatal Attraction, Narrow Margin, Consenting Adults, Breakdown, Unlawful Entry, and The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Now, I know some of them do cross over into In Search of Darkness 90s, don't they? Some of these titles.
Okay, so this is, all right. If I had like infinite timelines, so the Shudder thing, if Shudder come calling, we'd certainly, you know, consider it, because Shudder is a big audience to do our work. But this second question is really interesting because there are other genres I want to explore. I want to do a comedy, an 80s comedy documentary.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Thrillers is different. You talked about Breakdown.
Great movie.
Kurt Russell.
Great movie.
Great movie. But I just think that it comes down to demand, because the RoboDoc guys, you can't run a business if you're doing a film that takes 7 years. 7 years,
yeah.
Right. Okay. So like, it's sort of, and the reason it takes so long is because it's really expensive to do these projects, and one of the biggest expenses is talent. I remember we got who plays RoboCop? Peter
Weller.
Peter Weller, right? So I had a really surreal experience because we were doing In Search of Tomorrow and In Search of Darkness 3, and we had this day where we had Chris Jericho and Peter Weller in the studio at the same time. So I'm on a Skype call with Chris Jericho and Peter Weller, and it was fucking surreal. I was like on my kitchen table. So that was a real coup to get Peter Weller, but didn't ever do interviews at that point. And I think RoboDoc came out a couple of years later. The reason it takes so long to make those films is because it's very difficult to get talent.
Yeah.
And it costs a lot of money to do it, and you have to operate at a certain scale, a certain commercial scale. So going back to this idea about other projects, the challenge we've got is that because we've set a bar in terms of not just, because whether you think a documentary is good or not, that's your subjective opinion, but the fact that we've been prolific. So, this year we will have delivered 10 documentaries in 8 years.
Yeah.
Over 150,000 backers.
It's amazing.
Right? So when and at the very top of Hollywood in terms of like talent we get.
Yeah.
You when you do things like that, the problem you've got is that you've got to maintain it. So in order to maintain it, you need to have enough demand. There needs to be enough people that really want to do the thing you want to do. All right. And I would question whether kind of 90s thrillers, right, has that demand. And if we did do something like that, I just don't see the through point, because thriller is a bit of a bullshit word, right? Like, you can replace thriller with horror. Like, it's a bit like sci-fi horror. It's this middle ground.
Yeah.
Right, where you
it's that Seven, like, Silence of the Lambs kind of,
Yeah, absolutely, right. So absolutely. And so that's why it makes it tricky, because who's your audience?
Yeah.
And then because of the expectation of the work that we've done, people would expect top tier talent. And I don't know if there'll be enough demand for us to make it viable commercially.
Okay. Well, there's your answer, Brandon. Doesn't look like it's going to happen, but if you check out In Search of Darkness 90, the last one that you did, I think had a few of those crossovers.
95 to 99,
yeah. Had a few of those crossover movies. Okay. Jordan Moran says, what were the video store movies you wore out growing up? In the future, do you plan to continue a specific movie expanded, or maybe on specific directors? Well, we've talked about the fact that you want to do Terminator. Is this...
the short answer to that, I've covered the kind of movies that I watched. I won't do directors again because I don't think there's a demand. It becomes too noodly, but I definitely want to evolve the documentary format where I can cover like the classic films that have endured, that still have rabid fan bases, and deliver something which is a unique angle. And that's what I'm feeling so inspired about at the moment, because we've got a roadmap for 3 years which we announced to our backers, like this is our plan. So I kind of know what I'm doing up until 2028 at the moment. But this new format is something that's really inspiring me because I'm playing it in my head. I'm going, I love Jaws. I've seen every Jaws documentary, and you can't do a better Jaws documentary than what they've done if you go in at the same angle. So you have to take a very unique approach. And in fact, going to Chain Reactions, right? They took a unique approach. I got that. I really enjoyed it. You know, I wouldn't necessarily have crowdfunded it. I don't think it's the same value proposition as an In Search of Darkness. Like if we did that, it wouldn't work, right? But I would take the depth and complexity and indulgence that we create with our expanded formats and our kind of era documentaries, but I would apply it to classic films that still have a huge fan base, so that audience has more to talk about, and that really inspires me. Ultimately, all the decisions at CreatorVC come down to me, right? And occasionally, like Terabytes, I'm not a particular horror gaming person, but Dan Richardson, he was like, this is huge, this is brilliant, and they did a phenomenal documentary series about horror gaming. But the projects that I think have had the biggest impact for us have been ones where I'm like, I really understand what I want to learn from it. Like honestly, it's like a vision, but it's a feeling.
Next question is, hi, my name is Genevieve. Something I love about your horror documentaries specifically is how much time is devoted to unearthing and highlighting indie horror films that were often overlooked or forgotten at the time. Your films allow them a chance to find new audiences. As a filmmaker myself, what is some advice you would offer to a modern indie horror filmmaker so that their films don't have to wait years to be discovered?
That's a really great question, right? And I've got an interesting perspective. So I don't know if last year I started developing this project called Scream Seed, which was basically because I raised the money for Shelby Oaks.
Right. Yeah.
I raised $1.8 million for that. That was a CreatorVC fund, right? And it ended up getting acquired by Neon and going, it was in my local cinema. I went to watch and I saw the credits on the big screen. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But so this is a two-part answer. The first is, how do you get discovered, right? And this is the truth. What we've learned through history is that it's all about timing. So one of my really good friends, Jed Shepard, who was the writer of Host and Dash Cam, who I go to the cinema with all the time. Like, he's my horror movie buddy in London. The Host
is the one on Zoom, isn't it?
Right, it's the Zoom seance.
Because there's two. There's Host, which is the guy that did Parasite with the Godzilla thing. But no, this is the Zoom.
This is the
movie.
Zoom one, right? And that, for me, was the perfect indie horror, because we were all in the pandemic, and I sent it to my dad, Host, after I watched it, and I said, Dad, he's in his 70s, and I said, Dad, watch it on the laptop. And he wrote back and he said, are you trying to kill me? After watching it, it's really frightening. It's just brilliant. It's just genius. So tight, and having an angle is so important. the other thing I would say, so I'm jumping around a bit. With Scream Seed, I started looking at crowdfunding indie films. So I was going to put up some money, and I started speaking to loads of short film directors, and I wanted the audience to, the way that we validate our projects, and like you saw an assembly cut.
Yeah.
I wanted to create an experience where horror fans could really be interactive with the journey. So they'd pick the script, they'd pick the filmmaker, they'd be part of the casting decisions all the way through. It was an experiment. And in the end, after really working very hard on it for 6 months, I was like, I don't think I can carry on. And honestly, it was because I hadn't met filmmakers that I thought were strong enough, right? And I hope this isn't a controversy. I hope it's not taken as it was my lived experience, right? So my position was there's so many great short films out there. There must be so many amazing filmmakers that just need this kind of opportunity. And I started talking to lots of them. I literally spoke to about 100 award-winning short film people. And then I realized there's a kind of barrier that you have to get through. And it's a meritocracy. And the reality is that a lot of filmmakers aren't going to get through that barrier. And the ones that do tend to do it for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've seen it firsthand with Chris Stuckman, because he was a hugely successful YouTuber, and he went, I'm going all in. And he got the home run, and he was good enough, right? Regardless of what you think about Shelby Oaks, I really enjoyed it, but like, he's working on his new feature now. Like, he's in The Thing.
Yeah.
Right. So that's my sort of business look at indie filmmaking. I was like, this isn't a place. I don't think I can capitalize from a business perspective. I don't think this works as a business. It'd be super fun, but I don't think it works as a business. And so I went to a friend's party on Saturday night where there was quite a few horror filmmakers or people that wanted to make horror films, right? And I don't have any advice apart from, when I want to make a project, I fully commit. I will it into this world. And I'm not a filmmaker. I don't have those kind of ideas. I'm a documentary guy. I have really compelling visions that I have to make happen, right? And so my advice is, make it happen. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, go all in. Like, go all in. And this is the thing that I found, is I spoke to lots of people that had done, decent shorts, but I was like, I don't feel confident creating this opportunity for you, because there's just something you haven't gone all in. And the reality is, they shouldn't need me to get that next stage of success. They should be able to do it. And so my advice to an indie filmmaker is, you get one life and you have to go all in with this.
Yeah.
And in some respects, it's never been easier. When I speak to indie filmmakers, and I'm not an indie filmmaker, and I've realized, actually, I'll never make a film. I don't think I want to be involved either. I don't think it's what I want to do. But you have to make it happen, because I speak to so many people that have ideas, or they want to have that persona but just haven't delivered, or they've done like 20 shorts and haven't done anything. Stop doing that, right?
Yeah.
Like, no one's going to save you. And I can say that because I went all in on these documentaries. I remember the first day of hiring a co-working space, and I'm setting up CreatorVC, and I'm just going to make it work, and I have, and I'm like this. And no one saved me. I had to raise the money through crowdfunding, which is brutal. Had to try and get access to talent. Had to find directors, producers, like the whole thing, right? Like, and I can say that every project, whether you like it or not, like, I only do things where I fully commit.
Yeah.
And that changed my life, absolutely. And so my advice to Genevieve is, do it. Do it. You get one shot. I was speaking to a filmmaker on Friday, a really nice guy, and he was talking about like how he'd done all this stuff to network. I'm like, no one's going to save you. No one's going to come and invest in you. Like, and I'll tell you something, crowdfunding is amazing, because it's the filter, right? It's the filter, because like, if you are unsuccessful at crowdfunding, it's because your idea wasn't good enough. And that's the truth. It's the uncomfortable truth.
But I was going to ask you about that. The crowdfunding model's been kind of central to all your projects. What would you say is the biggest misconception about Kickstarter filmmaking, if you like? Because a lot of people look at it and go, "Oh, do you know what I mean? It doesn't feel like a real thing." What would you say is the biggest misconception about it?
That it's not incredibly brutally difficult,
Mm.
right? And I think that if you're someone that's very sensitive or isn't bullish, it's not the right thing.
No.
You know, the biggest thing for creators is sometimes there's two terrible things that can happen on Kickstarter. One, you don't get enough backers, so it doesn't happen. Two, you get too many, you don't know how to handle it.
Mm. Yeah.
And there's so many projects that just never happen.
But it gives you more creative freedom, I guess, than it does if you're tied to a studio.
I don't have anyone telling me what to do.
Yeah.
Right. We are direct to consumer. Like, the people that I listen to are you, literally. Right. Like, you're my boss. You know, you and 150,000 other people.
Yeah.
That's who. I'm being serious. That's who I listen to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it means that if you don't back my next project, either you weren't the audience for it or it wasn't good enough. I failed.
Yeah.
I failed to convince you that it was worth you spending a significant amount of money on.
Yeah.
Right. And what's great is it's binary. So it's like either you succeed or you don't. And that's, you know, I think for indie filmmaking, the guy that I was chatting to, he was like, "Oh, I just want to raise 30 grand just to pay for the production." I'm like, "Mate, that's like a monumental amount of money to raise. Like, just the marketing, just the logistics of getting just the way you produce it." Like, when we do, you'll see, if you go to the thingexpanded.com website, you'll see how complex the Shopify is that we use in the web. We don't use Kickstarter. We haven't used Kickstarter in years. But and I say this as an advisor to Kickstarter. I'm part of their advisory council.
Okay.
So I'm huge advocate of them back, you know, everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I rarely see filmmakers going all out on that because it's frightening. You have to put your baby, you have to be naked, and you have to. When we did the thing expanded, and before we came on, you were giving me some constructive criticism. I'm like, "Oh, you know, don't tell me that now." Right? But basically, but when you're doing that, you have to be like, "Well, this is what we're doing," you know.
Yeah.
And you press send, and then you kind of step away from the keyboard, right? And everyone likes it. But like, this is the point. Like, it's sort of, you have to be. I think you have to be incredibly brave and completely compelled to do it. And the people that are brave and compelled to do it are going to do it, and the people that don't. Or your ideas aren't good enough, and that's okay. You know, like, it's sort of. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it when you have a campaign and you email everyone, and then you just see, you know, people buying it.
Yeah.
It's the best feeling because we've got a vision and you're buying into it. And it's like, wow, we can do this. I don't need Shudder. I don't need anyone. I just need to be able to connect with you. And these platforms exist. Kickstarter, I've got to say, because I'm part of their advisory team, they have done so much work in the last 18 months to their platform to make it better for indie creators that I think there's no excuses. There's no excuses. I learned from doing Scream Seed that I didn't want it enough. I thought I did, and it turned out I didn't.
Yeah. One last question here, and then I've got one final question of my own, which I wanted to ask you. But Andrew's a friend of mine. Now, this probably sounds a little bit, I know what he means. He says, "I'd like to know if the team found the 90s as tough going as the audience did, due to it being a lean decade for straight up horror movies." Now, he means exactly what I said,
I know what he means. We knew that going in, right? And I said this earlier, I think, that we worked harder on the 90s documentaries in the 80s because the films are different. right? And you can't go wrong with the 90s, with the 80s, because like every year there's bangers, there's like classic, it was just an amazing time. But no, I agree. I think, and I've got to say, and I said this earlier, In Search of Darkness 90s is 12 hours and it's packed, and it's been our best reviewed In Search of Darkness ever, right? Like
cool.
it's been, you go onto Letterboxd and just read, like it's amazing. And the people that love it absolutely love it, but the people that don't love that era of movies. So you're completely tied in, and we call it the lost decade of horror for a reason. Because horror was the shit, right? It was like everything was horror, and then no one would touch it. We'd only do thrillers. We can't call it horror. It died, it went underground. And then all the indie stuff came up, and then now retroactively, Seven's a horror movie, Silence of the Lambs a horror movie. No, they were thrillers.
Yeah, exactly.
Day,
exactly.
Right? So like it's sort of like but I understand that we knew that going in.
Yeah.
Like even as and I tell you this, David Weiner, and I said this to him, you have amazed me with this. And I think that will be the hardest 2 documentaries he will ever make.
Yeah. He certainly did a good job on it. As I said, I didn't realize there was quite so much. I mean, I'll be honest, there was a lot of tut around in the 90s. There was some real naff stuff out there.
One man's tat, isn't that like there is? So because when we make a documentary, it's very different to making a film. So when you've got a film, you've got a vision, you just got a hope it gets to the other side of the fence and people like it, right? We don't operate that way. We work in unison with our audience. So we knew ahead of time what they wanted from us because we'd done the surveys. So that product market fit is really clear. And so the people that showed up and said, we want to be part of this, they loved it, but we knew it wasn't the same audience as the 80s. It was because of the films.
Yeah.
People have a different relationship with 90s cinema than they do the 80s.
Of course. I have one final question for you, which is one that I wrote down myself earlier on today, which is, what's the most surprising story you've uncovered during production of any one of these documentaries?
It's a great question. The most surprising story.
I think for me, out of all the documentaries I've seen,
you should answer that.
Well, I don't want to answer it because it would be a spoiler at this stage, but I think it would probably be one of the anecdotes from The Thing. So, yeah.
All right. So you ask. I mean, do you know what? I've been doing this for so long; they all blend together in my head. Like, and also because they're my documentaries. Like, I'll watch them obviously when we're doing reviews and feedback, but then once they're out, I kind of move on to the next thing, so I don't revisit them. If I had this brilliant question ahead of time, Darren, I would have come up with a wicked answer. What I'll do is I'm going to talk to the team and they'll jog my memory, and I'll put it in your Facebook group, which is brilliant, by the way. And I've got to say, I was really impressed with how deliberate and curated you are with your own group. Like, it's really, really good. I think that stuff really matters. So even when you put the post up about this interview, and I'm nobody, right? I was really surprised to see how interesting the questions were. So if you write that in your group, I will give me a day or two and I'll come back and I'll give a much better answer than that. And I can't remember. I mean, there's every project we do, every interview we do, there is new insights all the time. Right. And there's some stuff we can't, and I know the real answer to your question is probably something that I can't share because we have to take it out for legal reasons.
Oh, really?
You know? Some of the people we interview are in their 70s and 80s, and they don't care. You know, there's stuff Jim Cameron said that we were like, we don't want to get James Cameron in trouble, right? So but it's it's sort of I think there is an element of these film documentaries and YouTube channels when they do interviews, where some of the films that we love now, people in 100 years are going to love.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they will look at the videos we're making now and be like, wow, that's all that's left.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I take a step back, and I'm a film fan. So, but for me, cinema is art. Cinema is ideas. It's a uniquely human experience and communication. And like our value proposition is we want to take this and make more of it, you know. And I think there is, and it wasn't the intent with In Search of Darkness, but it has become, like you said, this sort of Bible of 80s horror. And there are people, you know, Stuart Gordon, Larry Cohen, there's others who are no longer with us, who gave us really detailed interviews towards the end of their lives, where they'd had that space and they could look at what they did in a different way. And I just,
it's a time
honestly,
capsule. It's fantastic.
yeah, it's a time capsule. And it sounds a bit morbid, but like, I'm so grateful to get to do this, and I really, really love it. I really love it. And it's sort of, and I couldn't do it without an amazing team. And I think that one of the reasons that I've had the team for so long is because they feel the same way I do. There's an element, they're like, I'm really happy to be here because I'm doing something that really speaks to me. And when you get to work with, it's not just David and Ian, but you know, it's Alex Towney and Sam Way, our editors, and like who really care. Like, this isn't some corporate advert or corporate film that has no meaning. Like, Aliens Expanded, the editor for Top Gun Maverick reached out to Sam,
Eddie,
going, I just watched your top Hollywood editor, and they met up. Like, it's wild. Like that, but stuff like that happens all the time.
I actually have met him on a few occasions. Eddie Hamilton. Great guy.
Right, like, and it's sort of, it's like, you know, it's you. We're the same as you. Like, everyone on this channel watching it now, you're watching because you're a massive fan of this genre and films, and you're knowledgeable, right? That's us. We're the same. We love this stuff. We're not in the industry. We're almost, I think part of the value is that we're the same. Like, we're you lot. We're like the fans, and I love that, and it gives us a unique perspective, you know. And I do think that that's what we're about. We're about like being the bridge. You've got all this IP that you adore, that's part of your identity. How can we, you know, how can our work bridge that gap? And one thing that I didn't mention is how I look at the relationship. Like, the Blu-ray for Aliens Expanded was $99.
Yeah.
Right? That's a significant, you know, like, I recognize that, right? But where else are you going to get that?
Exactly. And like you said, the money that has to go into these things to get the level of talent that you manage to get as well, for something which in a lot of respects is quite niche, a 6-hour documentary on one film. It's understandable, and I've always appreciated that. And you know, I've never, you know, I'm in a fortunate position where I'm able to back, and you know, hopefully those people that aren't in that position, as Brandon pointed out earlier, will get to see them at some stage in the future, you know, on a channel like Shudder or something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, it's sort of, I don't like the people that I focus on, and the fans that I focus on are the ones where they're like, I love this movie. This is my opportunity. And it sounds like names in the credits. It sounds like an ego thing. It's not. It's actually about connection. You know, it's about, you'll never sell your thing expanded Blu-ray.
It's interesting you say that, because I watched an interview that you'd done previously, and you said that when these films are put onto eBay, they go for quite a lot of money because people hang on to them.
Yeah, just have a look. I saw a James Rolfe Cinemassacre collector's edition of In Search of Darkness 2. I saw that sell for $900. on eBay. If you go onto eBay right now and type in Search of Darkness, like this would be £300 or $400.
Yeah.
Like I can't even find the 2-disc Aliens Expanded Collector's Edition because the other disc has got 15 hours worth of interviews that only exist here. They can't get them digital. Like, so you sort of, there is, and that they're designed to be like, the reason that they have the aftermarket price on eBay is so high is because people don't sell a lot. People don't part with them. And also we don't create a lot of them.
Yeah.
So it all goes back into the fact that we want to create something which is that you value.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me on this.
And can I just say thank you for making your video, for making what we do happen, actually. And I'm really grateful. Like I'm really, it was a great conversation. I really enjoy going into the Facebook group. You're brilliant at what you do. It's so nice to connect. Honestly, like we're going to go out for a beer.
Definitely.
We're going to meet up. I want to invite you to the next preview screening that you can make. Like it's sort of, this is what I'm after. Like this is, ultimately it's about like trying to connect with people that, are on your wavelength with this sort of stuff.
Yeah. Well,
I'm very grateful.
Thank you so much for the comments there. That really does mean a lot. Just before we go, just give The Thing Expanded a quick plug. Tell us when it's coming out, and also Slash or Trash again as well.
Okay. So this year we've got 3 main projects that we're pushing. So The Thing Expanded, this is the last time you'll be able to get your names in the credits, especially on this collector's Blu-ray. It's the best film documentary we've ever made, 100%. The pre-sale runs a little bit longer, so it will have started on Tuesday, and this is Thursday.
Tuesday.
We're doing this on the Monday, so it hasn't started yet, a bit confusing. So the pre-sale runs on the 24th of February to the March 24th. And check out the trailer. And you haven't seen it yet, it's awesome. And so that runs to the March 24th. Then Slash or Trash, the final pre-sale for that is going to be in October.
Okay.
And that will be for backers. That will be digitally available in November, and then we're hoping that the Blu-ray's out by the end of the year. The Thing Expanded digital, we're looking at April for backers exclusively, and then we want to start shipping out Blu-rays by the end of May.
Excellent.
And then we're doing the first pre-sale for In Search of Darkness 1970s. I'm working on that at the moment. And then finally,
will that be this year, the pre-sale for that?
The first pre-sale will be this year, but it won't come out till 2027.
Okay.
And finally, if we get the blessing from James Cameron and Gail Ann Hurd, we would want to do the first pre-sale for Terminator Expanded. So it's a packed year. And the thing is, like, we've got a plan for the next 3 years, but as soon as I wrote it, I was like, yeah, this is like the thing, like, you just don't know what's going to happen. I'm nervous about The Thing Expanded, but I also know what I've just been watching.
You have nothing to be nervous about whatsoever. People are going to absolutely love it.
I'm nervous about everything because, we care about it. We're all sensitive.
You've just landed Kurt Russell, for God's sake.
Yeah.
What a coup.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I tell you, it's that out of my entire experience of working in this space, which is 8 years, he was the hardest get. And layers of management. And like, it was like, this is the 2 sets of lawyers. Like, it was a lot. But absolutely did deliver. He delivered.
Fantastic.
And you'll see it in a minute, hopefully.
Yeah. I can't wait to see it. Okay, listen, Robin, this has been fantastic. I will see you hopefully a week on Monday. I'm going to try and join you at that screening we talked about. Thank you so much for doing this. It's been an absolute treat. And folks, thanks for watching. We'll see you all very soon. Cheers.